In 2025, we need more time to understand something than it takes to create it. And if you want to finish your work faster, stand out at your workplace, and stop feeling behind, this video is for you. But here's the thing, working hard isn't always the answer. The one thing that really pains me is seeing most of people, especially junior analysts at my firm, who don't really have that many years of experience, doing things that don't really move the needle day in and day out. Well, with the help of AI, this shouldn't be the case anymore in 2025 and beyond. So here are 3 AI workflows that I think everyone needs to master from now on to minimize distraction, maximize your output, and make sure you finish your work faster if you consider yourself a knowledge worker. And if you haven't met before, hi, my name is Kevin, a management consultant running a team of 20 in a listed company. And this channel is all about helping people find the time and productivity to grow in your busy life. This video is sponsored by money.com, but more about them later. Now, let me first break down the fundamental of knowledge work really quickly. If you're doing an office job, almost everything you do can boil down to just 4 steps. First, you got yourself an input phase. You search for information, pulling from your memories, past experience, maybe doing some of your own research, and even conversation with other people, right? And the second, you process that information by filtering out all the fluff and anything doesn't align with your goal or your company's mission. And then you synthesize what's left of it so that all the information actually makes sense in your head. Once that's done, you then create the output. Ideally, you form a killer opinion based on what you've learned. Maybe you shed new light on an old problem or flip somebody's perspective completely. And finally, based on your newfound insight, you either take action yourself or share it with someone who can. Ideally, you do something about it yourself, but that's probably not always within your control. So in a corporate setting, this may look like writing a report or give you a boss something he asked for, which is totally okay. So this is a good generalization of knowledge work, and almost everything here, except for the action part, can be outsourced to the following 3 AI workflow. Let me explain. So the first workflow is what I call a research hacking. In the workplace, we constantly need to research for new idea every single day. There are always new development in our industry, like a new marketing campaign, a new product to be developed, or your boss needs to write a new report or something, right? And it's pretty normal at this beginning stage. We just feel lost, like we don't know where to start or how to think about this topic.
So in that situation, you will most likely do some brainstorm with your team or with yourself, right?
But there are 2 big problems with that. First of all, the internet and to a certain extent, the world has become incredibly noisy place. There are just so much low quality garbage out there, which makes information intake very difficult. The good stuff is either hide behind a paywall or inside some proprietary database. Second, even if you get bits and pieces of good information here and there, it's actually very hard to put everything together in a coherent kind of way. Usually you're going to have to internalize all the knowledge in your brain, and that can take a long time. So this research hack workflow is all about finding good information on topic you actually care about. Take the trade war that has been going on, for example. If you're just watching Fox News, CNN, or scroll through Peter Navarro's Twitter feed, there's a good chance you're probably going to only see the surface level news and missing the real logic behind it all. So instead, try this hack. So you can go to Cloud and say, I want to understand the Trump trade war a bit better. Can you give me 5 classic textbooks on macroeconomics and international trade policy? So it's going to give you some classic textbooks, right? No, you don't need to read any of them. Who has time for that anyways, right? What we do instead is to have a conversation with them. And next, you want to go to Google and search for that textbook's name, and plus this 3 magic word at the end. And somehow, typically in the first link or 2, you're going to find yourself an ebook on this very topic that's very comprehensive and stood the test of time. And of course, there's another more advanced way of doing that. You can also go to ChatGPT and ask, I need to find a list of books which I can download as PDF to eventually feed to NotebookLM as database. I think I will use Gemini to do that. I need a table of these books and its downloadable URL. Write me a prompt for that. And of course, ChatGPT, being the nice prompt engineer that it is going to give you a very detailed and structured prompt. Then the lazy me just copy and paste into Gemini and toggle deep research and let it run for 2 minutes. I mean, look at this result. Direct link for the full textbook exactly on our research topic. Now, just to make sure you can actually apply this knowledge in your real work, we need to synthesize this information. And that's where Notebook LM comes in. And when you first open Notebook LM, You want to create a notebook. Once that's open, we can just add all the text sources we downloaded using this add button. And you can simply drag and drop all the textbook we've downloaded.
And of course, books can be a few years old, which may not have the latest information.
What you can do is to click this new Discover button and ask Notebook LM to find some newest interview podcast on the topic so that our notebook not only has the classic knowledge, but also the latest opinion on the subject matter. Then after you have that, then you can start asking questions and interact with all your textbook in a chat. This is probably the best way I found in today's AI market to do knowledge database. It's going to give you a very specific answer that minimizes the chance of hallucination. Pro tip, once you're having conversation in Notebook LM, if you find a useful conversation, make sure you hit this Save to Note button. Notebook LM isn't really trained on your personal data, so it doesn't save all your chat history. So if you don't save it, it's going to be gone next time you open up this window. Sometimes you want to change your sources. You can do that either by deselecting the sources on the left of the panel, or use a Mind Map feature to organize all your knowledge into a logic tree. You can have a very targeted conversation within a very specific area. And the second workflow you need to master is what I call insight mining. If you're working in an office, I'm 100% sure that you've been in this scenario before. Think about this. Your boss or supervisor asks for your opinion during a meeting, and you give some very generic answer that's kind of meh, and nobody really pays any attention to it. And then the person next to you stood up and say, oh, I read this paper recently, and then says this and this, and it was super inspirational and sparked a real conversation with the team. Here's something I discovered after I started managing my own team. Bosses and managers spend most of their time managing stuff. They don't actually have a systematic workflow, gathering interesting ideas from various sources. They actually really rely heavily on your team to bring valuable information to them. So if you can consistently be that valuable source of information, you will stand out in ways that routine work never allows. The question is, how exactly do you do that?
The key is to systematically generate insight, which in short is the sort of information that is true but least amount of people knew or think about. So this is how insight mining works. First, you need some basic understanding on your topic, which hopefully you have done in the previous research hacking workflow. And after that,
there are two crucial things you need to do. First, you gotta mine for major opinion around your topic. These come from news articles, interview, and podcasts featuring prominent voices in your field. So in Notebook LM, you can basically ask, based on the sources I've provided, can you summarize the popular opinion on this topic? And sometimes it's going to over-indexing and give you too much reference to look at. But I think it summarizes everything pretty nicely. And if you want something a bit easier to understand, you can also toggle this setting, change the response preference to shorter and analyst. I find that those two settings are the best when it comes to having a conversation with complicated topics. And if you want to have a better summary, you can even take this response and feed it to Cloud. Cloud's writing style is definitely something I like the most.
Once you've gathered these opinions, you need to have a real internal debate with yourself. Which perspective do you agree with the most?
For example, out of these three opinions I saw, well, number one, that's not really insight. I think it's a no-brainer. This is very likely. I'm not so sure about the third one. But the fourth, I think that's my insight right there. I can talk quite a lot about this fourth opinion. It has the largest potential to be expanded to different areas of discussion, right? So I really like the fourth opinion. I think I'm going to stick with that. After you identify this opinion that resonates most with your understanding, you need to go back to Notebook LM and ask it to provide evidence supporting this specific argument. So this is where you want to really have a conversation with AI and fish a lot of data out of it. How I do that was that I go to Discover again and prompt it, I need data to back up this argument. I just copy paste what I had before from Cloud. And just like that, Notebook LM will serve up all the credible economic data you need. And obviously, we don't need to go through each data point one by one, but trust me, this is where things get really powerful.
Opinion without data is just words with fancy packaging. Because once you have data, that's how you really make those insights come alive. What data allows you to do is to have a deeper conversation with AI, asking it, why do you think this opinion makes logical sense, or how does the data contradict with it?
Obviously, sometimes it confirms what you think, but sometimes it doesn't. That's where you need to think critically about your position and keep on refining it to make it more robust. This back and forth between your critical thinking and AI is where the real magic happens. In this process, AI's entire purpose is to ensure your argument stands on solid ground, backed by concrete data and evidence. It becomes your personal fact checker and research assistant. And as you build up this data interpretation like pieces of a puzzle, you'll naturally develop a deeper understanding of your topic. Your opinion will be more refined, more nuanced, and therefore way more valuable to your team. But here's the thing, this is not going to magically come together overnight. I find that to really deep research on one topic, you really need to practice getting these thoughts consistently over a couple of days. That's why when I knew I need to research a topic like the trade war, I start conversation with the Notebook LM pretty early on. And I continuously chat with it for over a week. And very rarely is your first insight actually your best one. You really need to develop a habit of regularly engaging with your knowledge base. Think of it like a watering a plant that eventually grows into something valuable. You don't want to get lazy on this process. I know my own laziness surprises me sometimes, and I'm pretty sure yours will surprise you too. The key is to build a daily habit. Just spend 10 minutes talking with your AI notebook and pulling out some fresh idea and perspective every single day. Now, before we move to our third workflow, let me point out a crucial mistake I see people making when using AI. The biggest one is what I call over outsourcing. Rely too heavily on AI throughout the entire process. If you just ask AI to collect information, analyze complex scenarios, and break down a topic of interest without giving much context, I mean, things like who you are and why you're asking these questions, well, AI isn't just going to read your mind. Your results are going to be mediocre at best. That's why you see me bouncing between these 4 different LLMs like ChatGPT, Gemini, Notebook LM, and Cloud. It's not because any single one isn't capable. I intentionally use multiple tools because the job can't be done in one step. Each logical step needs to run through me. I'm the one initiating each new phase of analysis. It's really like the factory production line. At each stage, there needs to be a quality control to ensure the intermediate output is solid before moving on to the next step. So if you have access to multiple AI tools, I suggest you to assign different roles to each one. In our trade work example, I use ChatGPT as my prompt engineer, Cloud as my writing assistant, Gemini for deep research, and Notebook LM for most of my interaction. And this whole process actually forces me to think instead of falling into the trap of over outsourcing. Pro tip, to assign a role in any AI, clearly specify who you are, what your objective is, which other AI tools you are working with, what role do you expect them to have, and what specific role you want this particular AI to play. And of course, you want to do this for all your chats before taking on the task.
Now, before we move on to talk about taking action after an insight, let me take a moment to thank today's sponsor, Monday.com. During my entrepreneurship journey, I've noticed that as my team increasingly adopts AI, task handoffs become more frequent and complex. Managing a workflow for a 20-person team is far more challenging than handling work on your own. Fortunately, Monday.com's intuitive interface allows us to create customized workflows that match exactly how our team thinks and works. What I particularly appreciate about Monday.com is how it balances team autonomy with alignment. Each team member can organize their own tasks and priorities, while I maintain visibility into overall progress through its real-time dashboards. This transparency has eliminated those endless status update meetings that used to drain our productivity. But that's not all. For me personally, the automation features are what really set Monday apart. When one of my analysts completes their research phase, they simply mark it as done on the platform, and team members responsible for data visualization are automatically notified to pick up where they left off. Setting up this automation is incredibly simple. Just choose your trigger, set the conditions, and define the actions. You can create multiple combinations to fit your exact workflow needs. So whether you're leading a small team or managing hundreds of people, this platform can transform how you work. Click the link in the description to elevate your team's productivity with Monday.com today. Thank you, Monday.com, for sponsoring this video. And let's move on to our third and final AI workflow.
Now, at this point, we've built this amazing database full of useful stuff. We've curated high-quality information, formed our own opinion, and we have a solid data backing everything up. That's good news. The bad news, that alone isn't going to make you stand out at work. Being successful at work often has very little to do with knowing the right answer. You see, most people in management position already intuitively know what the right answer is. You might think you're dropping some mind-blowing insight on them, but in reality, the thing you spend an hour researching might be something that they already had in backs of their mind for a long time. So what differentiates you isn't just the information, it's how you present it. But don't worry, as with the other workflow, there's a magical AI fix to that problem. So first of all, you need to have this tiny shift in your mentality, in your workflow, to transform the most boring facts into memorable insight that makes people actually remember your contribution. You want to turn them into compelling visuals. You should be able to look at the figure and say something like, Oh yeah, this chart shows you how semiconductor stock consistently outperformed the market by 12% during the previous trade war escalation. And it's interesting because it contradicts the conventional wisdom that tech stock are the first casualty in the economic tension, and therefore we should consider overweighting this sector in our portfolio strategy while everyone else is panic selling based on the outdated playbook. And that is the difference between just having the information and delivering the insight that makes your boss think, wow, that person really gets it. When you can interpret data this way, not only can you make better reports, but more importantly, you will transform boring facts into compelling story that actually make everybody remember you.
So what you want to do is to take a piece of data from our previous workflow and ask AI, in the context of your topic, what makes this data interesting that challenge the conventional wisdom, and how might people insert your position take action according to that insight?
Promise you, after a few weeks of doing this, you will naturally start connecting dots and forming compelling story across your visualization. And that's when the real question becomes, I've got all these separate insights from different databases. Now, how do I weave them into a killer narrative that actually make people sit up and pay attention? And this is a point where you truly separate yourself from everyone else who's regurgitating facts without the meaningful context that makes information actionable. Now, as a bonus tip, let me share with you a workplace storytelling from my consulting experience. When you boil it down, an effective storytelling only needs these 5 key elements. Number 1, the current situation or context. Number 2, the challenge the people are facing. Number 3 is a key problem that needs to be urgently solving. This elevates the stake and shows that you're actually solving something big. Number 4, your opinion on how to solve it. And number 5, your evidence and data backing up your claim. And this is where all this workflow is going to finally pay off. I use this framework with my clients all the time, but it works universally in any business setting. Master this and I promise your boss will start seeing you very differently. The tricky part is to string all the separate insight into one coherent narrative. Most of the business analysts I work with takes years to get good at this, but with AI as your thinking partner, it will probably take seconds. All you need to do is to type the following into ChatGPT. I need a prompt for Notebook LM to generate a storyboard of 20 slides on, insert your topic, like management consultant. Each slide should present a clear insight supporting, insert your argument. The structure should follow title, insight, data, and evidence. Write me a prompt so that Notebook LM can generate this storyboard outline. And just like that, ChatGPT works its magic, copy that prompt, paste into Notebook LM, and boom, you got a professional storyboard that would take hours to create manually. And then I essentially just compressed what used to be a 1 day's work into minutes. And just remember, this AI output isn't perfect off the bat. Depending on the quality of your sources and how well you're guided the AI at each step, you probably need to tweak the storyboard a little bit. I typically end up changing at least a third of what is given to me, but that's still a massive time saver. And the best part, you're not doing all the heavy lifting, reading all the literature and gathering all the data, right? It's like having a team of analysts working for you 24/7. And honestly, it feels pretty great. This final step may surprise you, and a lot of people don't do it at all. After you have a compelling story to tell, you actually need to talk to people about it. Not just 1 or 2 people. Think about it. Either they will be impressed by your knowledge or the latest development, or they will share a different perspective that's going to help you refine your story even further. The next time you tell it, it will be even better. This was one of my first lessons in consulting. Even if your baby is ugly, you want it to see the light of day as early as possible. The longer you spend perfecting something, the less relevant it becomes and the higher expectation people have for it. So once you have a decent story, share. Get out there and let everyone hear about it. So that's my 3-part workflow. Research hacking to gather quality knowledge, insight mining to have a critical thinking session with AI, and AI-powered storytelling to present them effectively. This system has completely transformed how I approach knowledge work, and recently, over and over again, I've seen it transform my team members' workflow as well. But at this point, let's take a step back and look at the bigger picture. At the beginning of the video, I talk about the 4 essential steps of knowledge work. What we are witnessing right now is a fundamental shift where AI enables us to outsource large portion of the thinking process that used to be exclusively human territory. So whether you're a financial analyst, an engineer, or an HR professional, as long as you work in corporate, about 80% of your work can be approached using the approach I've demonstrated in this video. That's why I truly meant it when I said we need more time to understand something than the time it took to create it. For many office workers, this shift isn't necessarily a good thing. With the direction AI is going, it's probably going to replace a lot of the jobs. But with the right framework and the right principles, it becomes an incredible opportunity for some of us to get ahead of your peers. After all, the fundamental of knowledge work haven't really changed. And your experience and character still give you an edge over any AI at this point of the history. At the end of the day, AI remains to be a tool. If you apply it the right way, it can take you much further in your career while still keeping you firmly in the driver's seat. If you're interested in seeing more on my workflow as a management consultant or want to dive deeper into the Notebook LM specifically, drop a comment below and let me know. There are tons of benefits to this amazing app I simply couldn't cover in a single video. If you want to see more of it, I'm certainly happy to revisit this topic in the future. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.